Let me be straight with you. Growing fruit in the American South is not like growing fruit anywhere else on this planet. You are dealing with humidity that would make a rainforest uncomfortable, clay soil that turns into concrete in a drought, and soup in a rainstorm, and weather that cannot make up its mind whether it wants to be subtropical or temperate. You will plant something with full hope and optimism, water it faithfully, talk to it, maybe even name it, and then watch it rot from the roots up because you picked the wrong plant for the wrong place. That is not a skill issue. That is a plant selection issue. The gardeners who succeed long-term in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and the Carolinas are not smarter or more experienced than everyone else. They just stopped trying to force plants from other climates to survive in theirs. They went with what belongs here. What evolved here? What spent thousands of years getting comfortable in this exact combination of heat and humidity and red clay that everyone else calls a problem? That is exactly what this list is about. 9 fruit-producing plants that do not merely tolerate southern conditions. They prefer them. They are built for them. And they will keep feeding your family for decades without you having to fight your own garden every single season. A viewer asked for this specifically. Someone who was tired of generic fruit lists written by people who have clearly never tried to grow a high-bush blueberry in Alabama clay in July. That request was heard, and it was the right one. This list is for the South. Only the South. Because your climate is specific, your challenges are specific, and your plant selection should be too. Welcome to Garden Sage. This channel exists to give you practical, no-nonsense food gardening guidance that actually works in the real world, not in some idealized raised bed in a mild Pacific Northwest climate. Subscribe and hit the bell if you want more of this, and let us get into it. Number 9. American Beautyberry. The native plant that feeds you, your birds, your insects, and your soul. Most people who have the American Beautyberry growing in their yard do not even know what it is. They just know it looks absolutely insane in September. Calocarpa americana, to use its formal name, produces clusters of berries so intensely purple they look artificial, like someone hot-glued craft store beads to every branch in tight, perfectly arranged rings. It is one of the most visually striking plants you will encounter in any American landscape, native or otherwise. But here is the part that most people miss entirely. Those berries are food, not just for the birds, though yes, the birds go absolutely berserk for them. The berries are edible for humans, and people across the South have been making jelly and wine from them for centuries. The flavor is its own thing, mildly sweet, faintly floral, with a complexity that sits in a category by itself. You are not going to compare it to a blueberry or a blackberry because it does not taste like either. It tastes like American Beautyberry, which is reason enough to plant it. Now here is why it belongs on this list from a pure practicality standpoint. This plant is a native. It evolved on southern soil, in southern humidity, through southern summers, and through the occasional ice storms that roll through in late February and make everyone question their life decisions. It does not care. Full sun, partial shade, deep shade, it grows in all of them. Heavy clay that would kill imported plants within a season? Beautyberry does not even notice. You can cut this plant to the ground in late winter, and I mean all the way down, and it will come back harder than before. This is not a metaphor. It is literally how you get the best production out of it. Hard annual pruning down to about 12 inches forces a flush of dense new growth that carries significantly more berry clusters than older wood would. If you let a beautyberry go unpruned for years, it gets leggy and produces less. Treat it rough in late winter, and it rewards you lavishly every fall. That is the deal. For wildlife gardeners, beautyberry is almost criminally useful. Mockingbirds, catbirds, towhees, robins, and at least a dozen other species treat it like a buffet. The leaves contain natural insect-repelling compounds. It is a host plant for multiple native moth species. It is doing ecological work every single day it exists in your yard, while also being genuinely beautiful and producing fruit you can actually eat. This is the bush that should be in every southern yard. The fact that it is not is purely a marketing problem. Bonus tip: hard pruning is not optional if you want real production. Get in there every late winter with your loppers and cut those stems down aggressively, about 12 inches from the ground. Do not be gentle. The plant will respond with exactly the kind of growth you want: dense, vigorous, and loaded with berry clusters. Do it once, see the results, and you will never skip it again. Number 8. Rabbit Eye Blueberry. The blueberry bred for people who actually live in the South. The blueberry failure rate in southern gardens is staggeringly high, and the reason is almost always the same. People plant high bush varieties developed for Michigan or Maine or the Pacific Northwest, stick them in Georgia clay, and then wonder why the bushes look miserable for 2 years and then die. It is not a mystery. High bush blueberries were not designed for your climate. Stop punishing yourself and the plant by pretending otherwise. The rabbit-eye blueberry, Vaccinium virgatum, is native to the American Southeast. That single fact should tell you everything. It did not need to be adapted to your conditions. It came from them. It grew here before anyone was cultivating it. That is not marketing language. That is just biology. A rabbit-eye bush takes a few years to really get going, but by year 5 or 6, a mature specimen is pulling 5 to 10 pounds of berries per season. Plant a small group of 3 or 4 bushes and you are talking about a serious harvest. Enough for fresh eating all summer, enough to freeze, enough to make preserves, and still enough to share with the neighbors. Which is good because your neighbors are going to start asking questions once they see what is happening in your yard. Varieties that consistently perform well in the South include Tiff Blue, which is one of the workhorses of the rabbit-eye world, Climax, which ripens early and gives you a head start on the season, and Premier, which is a heavy producer with excellent flavor. Plant at least 2 different varieties. This is not optional. Rabbit-eye blueberries are not reliably self-pollinating, and 2 different varieties together produce dramatically more fruit than the same number of plants of a single variety. This is cross-pollination doing its job, and it does it spectacularly when you give it the chance. Soil pH matters with blueberries more than almost any other crop. They want it between 4.5 and 5.5, which is quite acidic. The good news is that much of the South already has naturally acidic soil. The smart move is to get a basic soil test before you plant so you know exactly where you are starting from and can amend precisely instead of guessing. Sulfur brought down, lime brought up, simple math once you have the actual number. Bonus tip, get the soil test. It costs almost nothing, and it gives you real data to work with instead of hoping for the best. Southern soil is often already in the right range for rabbit-eyes, but knowing your specific pH means you are not leaving anything to chance. Precision beats optimism every time. Number 7. Elderberry, the southern hedgerow staple that pays you back in a dozen different ways. If you have driven through the rural South and seen tall, fast-growing shrubs with large, flat-topped flower clusters growing wild along creek banks, and fence rows and the edges of drainage ditches, there is a good chance you were looking at American elderberry, Sambucus canadensis. It grows wild here because it belongs here. It is not a weed. It is a resource hiding in plain sight. Elderberry has 2 seasons of productivity, and both of them matter. In early summer, those large white flower clusters, called elderflowers, are edible and genuinely delicious. They make an extraordinary cordial. They make elderflower lemonade. You can fry the whole clusters in a light batter. They are fragrant and floral, and a lot of people do not even know this part is edible because they are waiting for the berries. Do not wait, use both. The berries come in late summer, deep purple-black, hanging in heavy clusters from every branch. This is the part most people know about, because elderberry syrup has had a significant cultural moment over the last decade, as people have gotten more interested in natural immune support. A jar of commercial elderberry syrup is not cheap. An established elderberry planting that you manage yourself gives you enough raw material to make your family's entire annual supply at a fraction of the cost, with plenty left over for jelly, juice, and gifting to people who will be extremely grateful. What makes elderberry particularly valuable for southern gardens specifically is where it thrives. Low spots, heavy clay, areas with regular moisture, places where other fruit plants develop root rot and give up. Elderberry looks at that situation and sees ideal habitat. If you have a section of your yard that stays wet, that collects runoff, that other plants have rejected, elderberry will not just survive there. It will take over in the best possible way. Bonus tip. Plant 2 different varieties, always. Bob and Nova are a proven pairing for southern conditions. Cross-pollination between 2 different elderberry varieties dramatically increases berry set compared to a single plant grown alone. This is a pattern you will keep seeing on this list because it is true for a lot of native fruiting plants. 2 is always better than 1. Hey, quick pause before we keep going. If this list is giving you the southern-specific information you have been looking for and could not find anywhere else, hit the like button right now. It costs you nothing, and it helps more southern gardeners find this channel. Drop your state in the comments too. We genuinely want to know where the garden sage community is growing, and we read every single one. Now let us keep going. Number 6. Mayhaw. the Deep South legend that has its own festivals. If you grew up outside of Louisiana, Georgia, or East Texas, there is a reasonable chance you have never heard of a Mayhaw. There is also a reasonable chance that if you had grown up in those places, you would consider Mayhaw jelly to be one of the fundamental pillars of a good life. Entire festivals are held in its honor. Communities gather every spring to celebrate this fruit. That is not hype. That is a fruit earning its reputation through decades of genuinely being extraordinary. Crataegus acephalus, to give it its botanical name, is native to the swampy lowland areas of the Deep South. It ripens in April and May, earlier than almost anything else in your garden, and produces small red fruits that look somewhat like tiny apples or large cranberries. On their own, they are quite tart. Cooked into jelly, they transform into something that serious Southern cooks describe as incomparable. Floral, complex, bright, with a depth of flavor that commercial pectin-set fruit spreads simply do not achieve. The reason Mayhaw belongs on this list in a practical sense, beyond its extraordinary flavor, is where it grows best. Wet soil, flood-prone areas, low spots with poor drainage that defeat everything else you try to plant there. Mayhaw is not bothered by standing water the way other fruiting plants are, because it evolved in swampy conditions. If you have a drainage problem in your yard that has turned a section of it into a dead zone for gardening, Mayhaw does not see a problem. It sees home territory. This is genuinely rare in the fruiting plant world. Most things want well-drained soil. Mayhaw wants the opposite, and the South has no shortage of areas that deliver exactly that. Matching plant to problem is what smart Southern gardening looks like, and Mayhaw is the perfect example. Bonus tip: put your Mayhaw in the lowest, wettest spot on your property. That is not a compromised location for this plant. That is the premium location. Let it do what it was designed to do, and it will outperform everything else you could have planted there. Number 5. Muscadine grape, the grape that was actually made for this climate. European wine grapes are beautiful. They produce extraordinary wine in the right conditions. Southern summers with high humidity and heavy clay are not those conditions. Fungal disease tears through European varieties in humid climates with a speed and completeness that is genuinely discouraging to watch. You can spray and manage and fight it, but you are always fighting. That is a bad use of your time and energy. The muscadine grape, Vitis rotundifolia, is native to the southeastern United States. It did not need to develop resistance to the fungal diseases common in humid climates. It evolved alongside those diseases and simply handles them. The genetics are already there. You do not have to spray for it. You do not have to fight for it. It just deals with its environment the way something that belongs in its environment does. Muscadines are thick-skinned, intensely flavored, and large compared to most table grapes. The flavor is assertive in a way that either wins you over immediately or takes a little getting used to. But either way, it is a genuine flavor, not the mild sweetness of a grocery store green grape. Fresh eating, juice, jelly, and wine are all excellent uses. Muscadine wine has its own devoted following across the South for very good reason. The resveratrol content in muscadines is higher than any other grape variety. From a health standpoint, you could do a lot worse. Carlos is a bronze variety with reliable production. Noble is an outstanding red muscadine that does particularly well across a wide range of southern conditions. Supreme produces very large fruits with excellent flavor. Any of these planted with a good pollinator variety will give you a harvest that justifies every minute of the work. Bonus tip: muscadines only fruit on new growth produced in the current season. Every winter, prune the lateral shoots back to 2 or 3 buds from the main trunk, consistently, every year. Skip this pruning, and you get a tangled mess that produces a fraction of what it should. Do it faithfully and you get a spectacular harvest from a plant that basically runs itself. Number 4. Fig, the ancient fruit that thinks your southern summer is paradise. Ficus carica, the common fig, has been cultivated by humans for somewhere in the neighborhood of 11,000 years. That is not a crop that survived for 11 millennia by being fragile or difficult. It survived because it is extremely good at what it does in the right conditions, and the American South, particularly from Zone 7B southward, is about as close to ideal as it gets outside of the Mediterranean. Southern summers are long and hot. Figs love long and hot. In areas with a sufficiently warm growing season, a fig tree will produce 2 distinct crops in a single year. The first, called the breba crop, comes in early summer on wood from the previous year. The second, the main crop, comes in late summer and into fall on new growth from the current season. 2 harvests, from 1 plant, in 1 year. That math works in your favor. The varieties that have become iconic in southern gardens did so honestly. Celeste is probably the most beloved fig in the South. Small, super sweet, and crack-resistant even in rainy conditions. Brown turkey is more vigorous, larger fruited, and forgiving of less than ideal conditions. LSU Purple was developed specifically for Gulf Coast conditions and is one of the most productive figs you can grow across the Deep South. These are not random selections. They earned their reputations in southern gardens through generations of consistent performance. One of the great social traditions of southern gardening is the passing of fig cuttings from neighbor to neighbor. A fig tree in a family's yard for 20 years gets divided and shared, and those cuttings grow into trees that get divided and shared again. There is a living network of southern fig genetics distributed across backyards and gardens through simple human generosity that is genuinely worth being part of. Bonus tip: in the Upper South, a genuinely hard winter can kill fig wood back to the ground. Do not interpret this as the plant dying. The root system of a fig is significantly more cold-hardy than the above-ground wood. Cut the dead wood away clean in spring. Be patient, and new shoots will emerge from the base, often still producing fruit that same season. The root is the investment. The top is just this year's expression of it. Halfway through the list, and hopefully you are already mentally mapping out where these plants are going in your yard. If this content is clicking for you, leave a like and share this with another southern gardener in your life. They are probably fighting the same clay soil battles you have been fighting, and this information could genuinely change how their garden performs. Subscribe to Garden Sage if you have not already, and let us keep going. Number 3. Pawpaw, the native fruit that will change everything you think you know about American food. There is a specific kind of frustration that comes from learning, as an adult, that the most extraordinary flavor you have ever tasted in a fresh fruit was available in your own regional landscape the entire time, and nobody told you about it. That is the pawpaw experience for a significant percentage of people who taste one ripe from the tree for the first time. Asimina triloba is the largest fruit native to North America. It looks a little like a stubby mango on the outside, green-yellow when ripe, and when you open it you find soft, custard-like flesh in a yellow-orange color surrounding a row of large seeds. The texture is closer to ripe avocado than any common supermarket fruit. The flavor is a combination that sounds made up when you describe it but is completely accurate when you taste it. Banana, mango, vanilla, all three simultaneously in a fruit that is completely its own thing. People eat their first ripe pawpaw and immediately start figuring out where they can plant one. That is not an exaggeration. It is the consistent response of nearly everyone who encounters the fruit for the first time. For southern gardeners in zones 7 through 9, pawpaw is a natural fit that does not get nearly enough attention. It prefers partial shade when young, which means it works perfectly as an understory planting beneath larger trees or on the north side of a building where the afternoon shade gives it protection during establishment. It loves moisture-retaining clay soil, which is the soil you have whether you wanted it or not. It handles southern humidity the way a plant that evolved in southern woodland conditions handles southern humidity, which is to say without any drama at all. The catch is time. Pawpaw takes several years to begin producing, and it will test your patience in the early stages when you are looking at a plant that is growing slowly and not producing anything. Stick with it. The payoff when production begins is a flavor experience that no other plant in your garden can replicate. Bonus tip: pawpaw requires cross-pollination between two genetically distinct plants. Same variety from the same source does not count. You need two different trees. Hand pollination with a small paintbrush, transferring pollen between open flowers on the two plants during bloom time, makes a significant difference in fruit set. Bloom time is brief, and the flowers are not heavily visited by most pollinators. 5 minutes of hand pollination at the right moment can be the difference between a real harvest and a disappointing one. Number 2. Chickasaw plum. The native thicket that has been feeding southern families since before anyone was keeping records. You have almost certainly seen Chickasaw plum without knowing what you were looking at. Prunus angustifolia grows wild along fence lines, roadsides, field edges, and disturbed ground across the entire South. In early spring, before the leaves even emerge, it covers itself with dense white blossoms that are genuinely spectacular from a distance. And then in June, if you are paying attention, you will find the fruits. Small, red or yellow depending on the individual plant, sweet tart with a concentrated plum flavor that commercial orchards have completely engineered out of their fruit in the pursuit of size and shelf life. You will not find this flavor at a grocery store. The Chickasaw plum delivers something that modern production agriculture decided was inconvenient. And the result is a taste experience that connects you to what plums actually used to be before they got domesticated into blandness. The growth habit is thicket forming. One original planting gradually spreads through suckering into a wider and wider grove over time. This is initially a design consideration because you need to give it space and manage the spread, but it also means that your planting becomes progressively more productive over the years as the thicket matures and fills in. What starts as a few plants becomes a small grove. What starts as a small grove becomes a serious fruit-producing resource. It does this on its own, in clay soil, with no amendments and minimal intervention from you. It evolved in exactly the conditions you have. It does not want improved soil, it does not need fertilizer programs or special care. It wants to be in the south, in the clay, in the heat, doing what it has always done. Give it a fence line or a back corner of your property and let it establish itself. Come back in 5 years and bring a bucket. Bonus tip: make Chickasaw plum jelly from your first real harvest and eat a jar of it in January when the garden is bare and cold and the next growing season feels distant. There are few better arguments for planting native fruit than that experience. The flavor carries the whole summer in it. Number 1. Native American persimmon. The Deep South legend that outlives everything else on this list by decades. There is a particular kind of generosity that only very old plants can offer. Not just productivity in a season, not just reliable harvests over a decade, but a genuine living legacy that persists well beyond the person who planted it. The American persimmon, Diospyros virginiana, is that kind of plant. Trees live for over 100 years. This is not a 30-year investment. This is a gift to multiple generations of your family, planted by your hands in your yard today. The persimmon is as southern as anything gets. It grows wild across the region, it appears in southern food writing going back centuries, and the traditional preparations made from it. Primarily persimmon pudding, which despite the name is a dense, intensely flavored baked dessert closer to a very moist gingerbread than anything the word pudding usually implies, have been part of Southern food culture for longer than most Americans can trace their ancestry on this continent. The fruit itself has a learning curve, which is the main reason people who encounter it without guidance sometimes have a very unpleasant first experience. An unripe native persimmon contains tannins at a level that causes an immediate and powerful astringent reaction in your mouth. The texture is fine, the color looks right, but the sensation is somewhere between eating a cotton ball and drinking an entire pot of oversteeped black tea simultaneously. It is aggressively unpleasant. Wait for frost. After a hard frost, the tannins break down, and the fruit transforms into something that stops people mid-bite to figure out what is happening. The description that comes up most consistently is spiced brown sugar and honey, soft and sweet and complex in a way that fresh fruit rarely manages to be. People who taste a ripe native persimmon after frost generally go from skeptic to convert in about 30 seconds. The harvest window runs from October through December, which is genuinely unusual in the fruiting plant world. Everything else is done by then. Your garden is winding down, and the persimmon is in full production, giving you fresh fruit for fresh eating, for pudding, for drying, for several weeks after everything else has shut down for the season. For southern gardens in all zones where it grows naturally, it is an ideal plant in every practical dimension. Clay soil is not a challenge. Summer humidity is not a challenge. Hard winter freezes are not a challenge. Drought periods are not a challenge. This tree evolved on southern soil, and it shows in its absolute, unapologetic competence at surviving and producing in every condition your climate throws at it. Bonus tip: plant one male and one female. Native persimmons are dioecious, meaning male and female flowers are on separate trees. One male can pollinate multiple females. Source your plants from a local native nursery whenever possible, because locally grown stock has already adapted to your specific regional conditions and will establish faster and with less shock than plants shipped from out of state. Almost at the end of this list, and hopefully your yard is starting to look different in your imagination right now. Before we wrap up, if this channel has been useful to you today, subscribe to Garden Sage and hit the bell so you do not miss what we put out each week. Share this specific video with anyone you know who is gardening in the South and fighting the same battles everyone on this list will help solve. Leave a comment telling us your state and which plant on this list you are putting in the ground first. We read every comment, and the community conversations in the comments section are genuinely one of the best parts of what this channel has become. Bonus entry: blackberry, native and improved southern varieties. The aggressive native that produces more than you can possibly eat. No list of fruit plants for the South would be complete without acknowledging blackberries. And while they are common enough that they can be overlooked, they deserve a serious mention here because the production levels they achieve in southern conditions are genuinely staggering. Native rubus species grow wild across the entire South, and they do so for the same reason everything else on this list thrives here. They belong here. The improved varieties developed from these native genetics, including Natchez, Awachita, and Osage, take that native toughness and add thornless canes, larger fruits, and better flavor. Natchez in particular is one of the most productive blackberries available for southern zones, producing enormous fruits earlier in the season than most varieties, and doing it reliably year after year in clay soil with minimal intervention. A well-established blackberry planting in the South is almost too productive. You will run out of containers before you run out of fruit. Freezing, jelly, cobblers, smoothies, wine, you will be finding uses for blackberries because the plant simply will not stop producing once it is established. This is the good problem to have. Bonus tip: tip prune the new primicons, the green first-year canes, in early summer when they reach about 4 feet tall. Pinch the tip off. This forces lateral branching and dramatically increases the number of fruiting sites available the following season. One small act of pruning in July translates directly into a noticeably larger harvest the following spring. Bonus entry: Southern Highbush Blueberry, the bridge between rabbiti and northern varieties for Upper South gardeners. If you are gardening in the upper zones of the South, zones 6B through 7B, in areas like the Tennessee Valley, the Carolina Piedmont, or northern Arkansas, the rabbiti blueberry is still a solid choice, but you also have access to southern highbush varieties that were specifically bred to bridge the gap between northern highbush genetics and southern climate tolerance. Varieties like O'Neill, Sunshine Blue, and Emerald were developed to provide the large berry size and flavor that highbush genetics are known for, while incorporating enough heat tolerance and low chill hour requirements to perform in the Upper South. They are not a replacement for rabbiti in the Deep South, where the rabbiti will consistently outperform them. But for gardeners in the transitional zones, they represent an additional option that expands the range of blueberry production available to you. Bonus tip: do not mix southern highbush and rabbiti in the same planting for cross-pollination purposes. They are different species with different bloom times, and the cross-pollination between them is less reliable. Plant within species for the best results.